It was a calm Friday evening when Darren pushed open the door to his apartment, expecting the familiar scent of dinner and the comforting hum of quiet conversation. After an exhausting week at work, all he wanted was a peaceful evening with his wife, Mira, maybe a home-cooked meal, maybe a movie like they used to enjoy when life felt lighter. But what greeted him wasn't peace. Mira stood in the living room, already dressed in a sleek black gown that shimmered softly under the lights. Her hair was pinned perfectly, her lipstick bold, her heels sharp enough to make a statement. Darren froze for a moment, briefcase still in hand. "Going somewhere?" he asked, trying to sound casual though confusion stirred in his chest. She didn't meet his eyes. Instead, she picked up her purse from the table and said almost too easily, "I'm heading out this evening." The words dropped like a stone between them. At first, Darren thought she meant she was meeting a friend, perhaps her sister, maybe a colleague from work. But something about her tone felt off. It wasn't warm, not even neutral. It was distant, dismissive, like he was an interruption. "Where exactly are you going?" he asked again, a little more carefully. Mira sighed and rolled her eyes, as if he were being dramatic. "Out," she said flatly. "Don't wait up." That single word, out, carried a sting. It wasn't just casual. It was careless, as though he didn't deserve an explanation. Darren's chest tightened. He stepped closer, his voice low but steady. "Out with who?" Mira gave a cold little smile. "Why do you care so much, Darren? Not everything revolves around you." Her words sliced through him like thin glass. For years, he had stood by her side, through job changes, her long commutes, her late nights studying for promotions. He had believed they were partners. Now, the woman before him looked at him like he was a burden she had outgrown. When she moved toward the door, he stepped in front of it. His pulse quickened, but his face stayed calm. She stopped abruptly, surprised. Adjusting her purse strap, she looked him up and down with that testing expression, the kind that silently asks, "Will you actually stop me?" "If you walk out that door tonight without telling me the truth," Darren said quietly, "don't bother walking back in." The firmness in his voice startled even him. Myra's eyes widened. For the first time that evening, her poise cracked. "What's that supposed to mean?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "It means," he said, locking his gaze on hers, "I won't be here when you come back. I won't sit here wondering where my wife disappears to at night while I pretend everything's fine. You walk out without honesty. You walk out for good." The room went still. Myra's lips parted, but no sound came out. For the first time, her confidence seemed to waver. Her fingers fiddled with the strap of her purse. "You're overreacting," she whispered, but her tone had lost its edge. It wasn't defiance anymore. It was fear, fragile and unfamiliar. Darren took a slow breath, trying to keep his anger from spilling over. "Overreacting," he repeated, almost to himself. "You're dressed like you're going on a date, Mira. You refuse to tell me where you're headed, and you're telling me not to wait up. If I'm wrong, prove it. Tell me where you're going and with who. But if I'm right, then at least have the decency to admit it before you destroy what we built." His words hung heavy in the air, the silence that followed more painful than shouting. Myra's shoulders sagged, her confidence peeling away like paint on an old wall. "It's just dinner," she muttered, eyes on the floor. "With Anthony from work." The name struck Darren like a punch. Anthony. He knew that name too well. The way the man hovered around her at office parties, how his compliments came with too much warmth, too much intent. Darren nodded slowly, the disappointment settling deep in his chest. "So, I was right," he said, his voice quiet but cutting. "At least now I know the truth." Mira looked up, her eyes wide. "It's not what you think," she started, but he held up a hand to stop her. "No," he said firmly. "Don't insult me with lies. You made your choice the moment you got dressed for him, not for me." The tremor in his voice betrayed the calm he was fighting to keep. She opened her mouth again, but nothing came out. Her face went pale, her confidence now completely shattered. Darren turned and opened the door, the sound echoing sharply through the silent room. The night breeze slipped in, carrying the faint hum of passing cars and the scent of wet asphalt. He stepped aside but didn't move out of her way. Instead, he looked her square in the eye and said, "Go. But understand this. When you come back, the man who stood by you all these years won't be here anymore." Mira froze, the words sinking deep. She wasn't ready for that kind of finality. Her breath hitched. "You don't mean that," she said weakly. But Darren didn't respond. His expression was calm, heartbreak hidden beneath a quiet kind of strength that scared her more than anger ever could. For a moment, neither of them moved. The ticking clock on the wall became unbearably loud. Myra's eyes darted between the door and his face, as though hoping he'd soften, that he'd say something to undo it all. But Darren stayed silent, arms folded, gaze steady. The silence spoke everything words could not. Finally, she let out a shaky breath. Her fingers loosened around her purse and she whispered, "I didn't plan for this to happen." Her voice broke mid-sentence. "It just happened." He listens, Darren. "You don't anymore." Darren's chest tightened, not in anger this time, but in quiet sorrow. "Then maybe you should have told me that," he said softly, "instead of sneaking out to find what you could have asked me for." He looked at her, not as a husband now, but as a stranger who had loved her once. "But go ahead, Mira. If he listens better, then go where the conversation feels easy." Myra's lips trembled. She looked at him as if seeing him for the first time, not the husband she had grown used to, but the man whose quiet strength had built their life together. For a brief moment, guilt flashed across her face. "You make it sound so simple," she murmured, her eyes glossy. "It's not like that." Darren tilted his head slightly. "Then tell me what it's like," he said, his tone steady. "Tell me what's worth risking your marriage for. Tell me what you get from him that you lost in me." His words weren't cruel. They were searching, pleading for a truth he already sensed would hurt. Mira hesitated, swallowing hard. He makes me feel seen," she said at last. "Like I matter. Like I'm more than just someone who cooks and cleans and keeps the house in order." Her voice cracked. "I don't even know when we stopped talking, Darren. When did we become strangers?" The words pierced through him, but he didn't flinch. Instead, he nodded slowly. "You think I don't feel the same?" he asked quietly. "I've been trying to hold us together while you've been slowly walking away. I asked what was wrong. You said nothing. I offered to take time off. You said I was overthinking. How can I fix what you hide from me?" She bit her lip, fighting tears. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," she whispered. "It just felt good to talk to someone who—" She stopped herself, realizing the confession already said too much. Darren turned his gaze to the floor, his jaw tightening. "Someone who isn't your husband," he finished for her, the words bitter but calm. "Someone who doesn't carry the weight of the life you built together." He looked up, his eyes sharp but weary. "I would have listened, Mira, but you never spoke." She covered her mouth with her hand, a silent sob escaping. The reality of what she was about to lose was finally settling in. This wasn't just a fight. It was a breaking point. She could feel the finality in the air, the kind that doesn't leave room for apologies or promises. Darren stepped aside, leaving the door wide open. The evening air swept between them again, cold and accusing. "You still have a choice," he said, softer now. "But whatever you decide, make sure it's something you can live with. Because once you step out, it changes everything." Mira looked at him, eyes full of tears she could no longer hide. For the first time in a long while, she didn't have the last word. She simply stood there, torn between desire and duty, between comfort and conscience. The night outside seemed to pull at her, but the quiet heartbreak in Darren's eyes held her still. The silence stretched, heavy and suffocating. Darren leaned his shoulder against the doorway, watching her wrestle with herself. He could see the storm behind her eyes, the guilt, the shame, the confusion. Mira looked past him toward the dark street, the glow of distant streetlights spilling faintly across the pavement. "Do you even love me anymore?" she asked finally, her voice barely more than a whisper. The question hit him harder than all her words before. He exhaled slowly, his face unreadable. "Love you," he echoed, as though testing the word on his tongue. "Yes, Mira." I love you. But love isn't blind obedience. It's not silence when something's breaking. I've loved you enough to stay, even when it hurt. But love can't survive where truth keeps dying. His tone was calm, but it carried the kind of sorrow that could fill an entire room. Her breath trembled. You make everything sound so final, she said, stepping closer. People make mistakes, Darren. I just needed space, a little attention. I didn't mean to hurt you. He gave a faint, sad smile that didn't reach his eyes. People don't accidentally hide their intentions, he said softly. You didn't stumble into this, Mira. You dressed up for it. His gaze dropped briefly to her polished heels before returning to her face. That's not a mistake. That's a decision. Mira blinked hard, fighting the tears that blurred her vision. You don't understand, she murmured. I was lonely. You were always busy, emails, deadlines, projects. I'd go days without hearing you laugh. Do you know what that does to someone? Darren didn't interrupt. He let her speak, her words tumbling out in fragile bursts, as though each one released months of buried frustration. When she finally looked up, he met her gaze. I was busy trying to build a life for us, he said quietly. Not for me. For us. I thought you saw that. I thought you understood that every late night was for something we could both share. His voice cracked slightly. But maybe I was wrong. Maybe I was building a home for someone who'd already moved out in her heart. A sob broke free from her lips. She covered her face, shoulders shaking. I didn't move out, she cried softly. I just got lost. I didn't mean to drift away. Darren's eyes softened, but his stance didn't change. He wanted to comfort her. He always had, but something inside him refused to step forward this time. Love without honesty was a slow death, and he had already bled enough. Then find your way back, he said at last, his tone steady but tender. But not through guilt. Not through fear. Find it because you still want this, not because you're scared of losing it. His words seemed to pull something deep inside her, something she had buried beneath pride and excuses. Mira wiped her tears with the back of her hand. And what if I can't? She asked, voice trembling. What if too much has already broken? Darren sighed. Then at least you'll know you tried, he said. But walking out tonight won't fix that. It'll only make the cracks permanent. He stepped aside again, motioning gently toward the open door. So decide. Him or home? Truth or pretense? Her eyes darted between him and the night beyond the door. The streetlights seemed to flicker in rhythm with her heartbeat. She thought of Anthony. The laughter, the easy compliments, the way he made her feel young again. But then she looked back at Darren, the man who had held her through sickness, who had believed in her dreams when no one else did. And in that moment, she realized something terrifying. Comfort isn't the same as connection. One fades. The other scars when it's gone. Myra's hand tightened around her purse. The gold clasp shimmered faintly under the living room light, like a question waiting to be answered. Her breath came unevenly as she whispered, If I stay, will it even matter? Can we go back to what we were before? The desperation in her voice was quiet but sharp, slicing through the air between them. Darren took a moment before answering. His eyes softened, though the pain in them didn't fade. No, he said finally. We can't go back. What's gone is gone. But maybe we can start over, if you're willing to be honest. I don't need perfect, Mira. I just need real. His words weren't rehearsed. They were heavy, tired truths that came from a heart that had been stretched too thin. She looked at him, then really looked. The man standing before her wasn't angry anymore. He was wounded, yes, but beneath the ache was a quiet kind of dignity she hadn't noticed in years. And it made her heart ache worse than guilt ever could. Tears pooled again in her eyes as she stepped closer. I'm sorry, she whispered, her voice cracking. I should have told you how I felt instead of trying to find comfort somewhere else. Darren's jaw clenched. Sorry doesn't erase what almost happened, he said softly. But it's a place to begin. He took a deep breath, his tone weary but calm. If you mean those words, then go change out of that dress. Stay. Let's talk. Really talk. The moment hung in the air like a fragile truce. Mira hesitated, glancing toward the door one last time. The night outside seemed darker now, less inviting. The thought of stepping into Anthony's car, sitting across from him at dinner while pretending everything was fine, it suddenly felt hollow, foolish, wrong. With trembling hands, she set her purse on the table. When she looked up, Darren was still there, waiting. His arms were crossed loosely, but his expression had softened. She took a cautious step toward him, half expecting him to turn away. But he didn't. "I'll stay," she said finally, barely audible. "Not because I have to, but because I want to fix this." He nodded, relief washing over him like a silent wave. "Then let's start there," he said quietly. "No lies. No pretending. Just two broken people trying to remember what love once meant." Mira managed a faint smile through her tears. "You still sound like the man I fell in love with," she whispered. He gave a small, weary laugh. "That man never left, Mira. You just stopped seeing him." His voice was soft, not cruel, and it made her cry harder. Not from pain, but from the realization that maybe, just maybe, all wasn't lost. She reached out slowly, her fingers brushing against his arm. For the first time in months, he didn't pull away. Outside, the wind carried the faint sound of cars and city life continuing as if nothing had happened. But inside that small living room, something shifted. A fragile thread of forgiveness quietly stitched itself into the cracks. The night that had almost ended their marriage became the night they finally faced the truth. And as Darren closed the door, the click echoed softly. A promise, not of perfection, but of a second chance earned the hard way. Please like, comment, and do not forget to subscribe.